So the battle of the bed. This is a topic that is near and dear to my heart because of the fact that if you have trouble hitting the snooze button, if there's anybody in the world that can feel your pain and relate to your struggle, I'm that person. Today I'm going to give you every single thing that I know and every tactic that I've used to finally kick the snoozing habit and losing this, what we call the battle of the bed. But before we get into the nitty-gritty details of actually how to accomplish this, I want to tell you why this is so important and what happened to me. So when I was 21, 22, I just got out of college and I got my first job as a music teacher. And this was a pretty, actually, for some weird reason, intense job. I was split between all these different buildings, and coupled with the fact that I had a lot of maturing to do myself, it was a tough go. It was a tough job, and it was really more for a seasoned professional. But I obviously did something right because I got the job. I had a lot of struggles from day one, from literally the very first day, of a lot of weird power struggles with administration. What happened was about a year and a half in, we got to this point where, it was survival mode for, I did everything I possibly could to try to impress these administrators and stuff. And it really was survival mode at one point. And these bad patterns, over the last year of being so stressed and so depressed because of the fact that I love teaching music. It was my career choice of path. I went to college. For the fact that I spent, the last almost decade of my life thinking about nothing else, it was very shocking and very shocking to the system that all of a sudden I had all these issues, and it was my first go, and I was a young kid still. I noticed that these patterns were developing, and I was staying out really late. I was avoiding anything I could to having to start the next terrible day, and that rolled into a lot of sleep problems and a lot of, staying up way too late, getting very lack of sleep. And wouldn't you know it, one day, I would always hit snooze. So I'd hit snooze, a couple times here and there, and I'd stretch that time later and later. I'd be rushing to work later and later because of the fact that I didn't want to go. And wouldn't you know it, one day I was so exhausted, I hit snooze and I slept right through the second alarm or whatever happened. And I woke up on my own, way past the beginning of the first school day, where I would have had kids in the room and I was panicking. I didn't even know what to do. I didn't know who to call. And somebody at the same exact moment, I forget what it was, a teacher called me, and I stupidly picked up. And I, for some stupid reason, lied and said, I'm at the other building. I'll be there shortly. So that was the final straw for the administration, and that ultimately was the nail in the coffin for letting me go. Why I tell you that little ridiculous story is because you need to know how important of a topic this is for me and how I've worked for many, many, many years to never, ever hit the snooze button again. So this is broken down into 3 sections. The first section actually has nothing to do with hitting the snooze button or waking up on time. It actually has to do with the night before. What I would suggest is to implement some type of evening or PM routine. Now, this is not a video about developing a special routine and all these things. This is simply a routine that enables you to tie up all the loose ends of your day. You need to have everything kind of tidied up both physically and mentally and emotionally, because of the fact that when that first alarm goes off, you're going to have a very vast inner dialogue, and you have to have every excuse that could be on the table locked up. If you've ever had way too much to do where you've just decided, you know what? I'm not going to do any of it. That's kind of this paralysis by, overstimulation and overscheduling situation that can happen ultimately when you first wake up. So if you first wake up and you're trying to, win the snooze button, and you realize your kitchen is a mess from last night. You have no clothes prepared for the workday. Your project for your boss is not even done. You know what? That's way too much. Forget it. I'm gonna give myself another 10 minutes because I need it. So the next section is revolved around your sleep, because ultimately sleep is a very important aspect to many areas of our life. But if we want to get up first bell, then we have to prioritize sleep. And of course, number one is the amount of sleep. So you have to really take a hard look at what time you're actually going to bed, because if we say to ourselves, we're going to go to bed to 11, and by the time you actually fall asleep, it's 12:15, there's a lot that's actually happening there. So we have to really dissect to make sure you're getting enough sleep. And again, a PM routine, an evening routine will definitely help with that, because you can have that end point of, okay, I need to be in bed, lights out at this point. So what do I have to do to get there? That will ultimately help with that. The next topic around sleep is we have to talk about your quality of sleep, because it doesn't matter if we're getting 7.5 hours of sleep. If it's crap sleep, then it's not going to really do us any good. Obviously, the first thing we have to do is look at your bed. I noticed, and my wife noticed, that we wake up with pains and aches and all these things, and we're like, we're mid-30s. We shouldn't be experiencing this. And we realized that we haven't had a new mattress in almost 12 years. It was dipping and had lumps and all that stuff. So it may be time to invest and get yourself a new mattress. You may also want to experiment with certain things, such as a sound machine. So when we first had our baby, we actually we had the baby in the bassinet next to our bed, so we would have a sound machine, and I never slept with the sound machine. All of a sudden I realized it actually helped me sleep a lot deeper. So a white noise machine, some type of static. I wouldn't necessarily recommend like the waves or some type of forest sound or something like that. Just try to ease into it with a simple static. You also want to make sure that your room is super dark. So you can either do this with an eye mask. For me, that wouldn't work. I just don't like anything on my face. But good thing that my wife and I both like it extremely dark. So everything's drawn and you really can't see pretty much your hand in front of your face. You also have to ask yourself, do you have some type of chronic issue? Do you have a medical condition? Maybe you do need to use a BiPAP machine. Maybe, that snoring is just actually something that is not just affecting your partner, but also affecting your sleep. Finally, is something you can experiment with if you're an open mouth sleeper like I am, is mouth tape. Well, the reason I am an open mouth sleeper is because I have a slightly deviated septum. I actually just ordered some mouth tape, so I will update you in the comments and let you know how that's going. See if I make it through the night, but that's definitely something, because if you're breathing through your nose, it is going to be vastly a much better sleep than breathing through your mouth for a myriad of different reasons. Lastly, revolved around sleep is actually your wake up and your sleep timing. So if you've ever looked into this, you'll learn that a sleep cycle is on average about 90 minutes. So every 90 minutes we repeat a sleep cycle, and our body's going through all different type of stages of deep sleep, REM sleep, all these things. And what our collective findings are teaching us is that if you can plan your sleep and wake windows to 90-minute intervals, you might have a chance of feeling much more refreshed and awake when you actually wake up versus groggy. So if you've ever woke up and you had 8 hours of sleep and you wake up and you still feel like crap, it could be that you're waking yourself up in the middle of a deep cycle. On the contrary, if you've ever woken up and you've woken up like 5 minutes before your alarm, that very well may be a perfectly timed sleep cycle where your body's already got that inner alarm clock happening, and you're waking up, you're like, oh man, why am I awake? Oh wow, it's 5 minutes. That might be something you want to look into. Every single type of sleep app and sleep program out there is always going to have that 90-minute cycle. It is not scientifically proven because of the fact that there could be many different variables. It could be a huge effect if it takes you a long time to fall asleep. For me, it doesn't. I fall asleep immediately. So yeah, I'm blessed. Okay, part 3. This is kind of the meat and potatoes. This is all about the first few seconds, the second that first alarm and only alarm goes off. what do we do? Well, first, before we even get to what we do, we can talk about the alarm. I've said this in numerous videos. A million other people have also talked about setting the alarm clock across the room. So I use Lady A as my a little Echo Show that I have, and it's an alarm clock built in, and I have it across the bedroom, and that's worked really well for me. There's also a million other fancy alarm clocks where you can actually, something will lift off and fly up into the air, and the alarm clock will ring, and it will keep ringing until you get out of bed to get this little disc or plate, whatever that flew off, and bring it back to the base of the alarm. There's other ones that roll around the room and you gotta kind of chase it or whatever. Those are really cool. I mean, I've never had to get to that point, but it may be something you'd like to look into. Another thing you can try is experimenting with changing the sound of your alarm. And this is something I've never done, but it's definitely something you may want to experiment with, because of the fact that even if you have a very soothing and lulling alarm that eases you into the morning, you just by association could start to connect that with all the problems of your day. Not only the problems of your day, but the problems of beating that snooze button, right? Hitting snooze and trying to win the battle of the bed. We could associate that sound with negativity. So maybe every couple of days change the sound, something you might want to experiment with. Next is to have a plan. You need to have the first at least 3 to 5 action items the second that alarm goes off, planned out in your head, so there's no confusion about what you're about to do. For me, it goes even as granular before I even get downstairs and let the dog out to go pee. I mean, it gets as granular as the second I wake up, I shut the alarm off, I put on my pants, I get my things, meaning I get the baby monitor, so I take that downstairs while my wife is still sleeping, because she's still sleeping, and my phone, and I unretire my phone, if you will. Granted, I have enough self-control where I don't have to. I'm not worried about using it. I'm just bringing it downstairs with me. That's another topic for another day. If you're too connected to your phone and you think it's going to be a problem for your mornings, whatever, you may want to put that somewhere else. You don't have to use your phone as an alarm. Either way, I have those things. I get those things. I go downstairs. I let the dog out. I push the button for brew the coffee. The dog comes in. I feed the dog. I pee. So I have all these things mapped out to a T that I don't have to question about what's going to happen the second that alarm goes off. Because ultimately, when it's January 13th and it's freezing and you're bored and it's cold and it's dark and you're tired and that buzzer goes off, if there's any question of what you need to be doing, that's another roundabout discussion that will happen in your head and be because you're groggy, remember. So we have to have a plan, at least the first 3 to 5 tasks that will happen the second that alarm goes off. Next is eliminating every type of excuse that you can give yourself possible. So if your first few tasks are, say, for example, going to the gym, you want to make that as easy as possible and as hard to give yourself an excuse. So if you have your gym clothes laid out, and I mean laid out nice, your pants are folded, your shorts are folded, your shirt is folded, your socks are on top, your shoes are everything is ready to go. That's going to eliminate any type of excuse to get to the gym. Maybe your keys for your car are right there too. Maybe your protein shake or your morning shake or whatever is already made, ready to go, and you just have to take it out of the fridge and blend it or something. Maybe if the first thing you're going to do, or one of the first things you're going to do, is journal and do some reflection, you have the journal and the pen right there ready to go. Maybe not at your bedside, but wherever you're going to do it, right there, to eliminate any type of excuse for that first few tasks. So the last part of this section is revolved around the conversations that happen whether you fail or you succeed. And this is an internal conversation. So let's talk about the positive. The positives of actually getting out of the bed from the first alarm that goes off, compared to the positives that you get to snooze for another 12 minutes, 20 minutes at max. completely outweigh. Let's break it down. You get out of bed, you finally succeed, you're like, yep, first snooze, boom, and you're off to the races. And whether it's simply you just have a little bit more time to relax when you get to the office. Or maybe you have this whole morning routine plan and you did it and you worked out and you did a little meditation or something and you felt awesome. Or maybe it's simply that you wanted to spend a little bit more time just relaxing in the morning. Whatever it is, that positive conversation, the positive feeling, and the ultimate reward that you get from that completely outweighs the 10 or 20 minutes that you get to sleep more. Because it's not deep sleep. You don't need the sleep. What is 10 minutes gonna do? Nothing. It's all in our head. It's all in this sleepy, bad version of ourself. And it's this angel and the devil on our shoulders. So just remember that you're gonna have that conversation as you've had many times in the past. You're gonna have that, but you have to remember that the second you hear that alarm goes off, you have to know the positives of actually hitting that alarm, getting out of the bed and starting your day the very first second, and not choosing to procrastinate. Making procrastination the first thing that you do will be way more powerful than getting a few 9 more minutes of sleep. The last thing I'm going to mention in this episode is something that most people don't mention, but I think is very important and it's very specific to you. You need to find the key that is the unlock for your consistency. Let me explain. In my world, the key to winning over the snooze button every single time is making sure that I get out of bed before my wife. And I'll break it down. Before we had our baby, I would always wake up before my wife. It just worked out like that. Not that I wanted to, that's what our schedule was like for years. And that was my building years. I mean, I never hit snooze. I can't even remember if I've ever done it. I mean, when I, crossed that threshold and learned all this stuff many, many years ago. We had our first baby 15 months ago. Beautiful little Quinn. And it's that first couple of months was very rough. It always is when you have a new baby. A lot of things change, temporarily, but a lot of sleep things change because there's a lot of broken sleep happening, at least for the first 2 to 4 weeks. Baby's trying to figure out their own circadian rhythm. What happened was we would try to sleep whenever we could. So a lot of times we would trade off, and Ashley would wake up early, when the baby woke up, and I would get some shut-eye, vice versa, whatever it is, whatever the situation dictated. So with that, throughout the window, a lot of my morning routine changed. It became pushed into the AW routine and flip-flop. So what ended up happening when we found something that worked for a while was that I actually started waking up after my wife. And all of a sudden, this thing crept in, which I haven't had in literally years and years and years, this losing. I lost the battle of the bed many, many times. And I was like, whoa, what is happening? What's the problem? Why is this happening? And I realized simply, this is the key. The key is waking up before my wife, and I'll explain. There is a little bit of a subconscious, I know it's kind of funny, but there's a little bit of a fear that when the alarm clock goes off, I kind of want to jump out and get it, shut it off as fast as possible, because I'm trying to be a nice guy and I'm trying not to wake up my wife before the time she actually has to wake up. Secondly, it also forces me not to actually walk back to the bed and snooze for another 10 minutes after I've walked away from the bed, because that's possible too. Because if I go back in that bed after I got up, I kind of woke her up just for a second, and she feels me rustling in the covers, and she's rightfully going to be upset because, if you're not going to get up, then don't get up. If you are, do it. Whatever, make the decision, dude. So there are a million different keys to your unlock of your consistency, but you have to find your own. And this only comes from experimentation. This only comes from trial and error and really dissecting what went wrong, dissecting the inner dialogue that's happening in the moment the second that alarm goes off. As we wrap up today's episode, I will mention there are a lot of other thought leaders out there that have really cool little tactics. Mel Robbins has the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 launch tactic, not just for getting out of bed, but for a lot of different things. Tony Robbins has his things, so there's a lot of different tactics specifically for kind of jumping out of bed that might help you if you find that none of this works. Thank you so much. I hope this helps you in your journey for winning the battle of the bed. If you like this video, definitely hit like and consider subscribing to the channel, and of course hitting the bell notification to be notified of the next episode that comes out. And if you are looking to actually build a real solid morning routine that you can invest in, the second actually you win that battle of the bed, and what you're actually going to do, what you're going to do with that time, check out this video right over here.